All right, looks like the recording has started. So we'll go ahead and get going. I'll call this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly Committee on Homelessness to order. Travis, could you please call the roll for us?
Sure thing. All righty, Miss Allard.
Here.
Mr. Constant. Mr. Dunbar. Miss Kennedy.
Here.
Miss LaFrance. Mr. Perez Verdia. Mr. Peterson. Mr. Rivera. Mr. Wells.
Here.
And Miss Saltel.
Here, thank you. We do have Mr. Perez Verdia with us. And as other members join us, since we're getting started right on the dot, I will note when they come on the line. So I have a share screen with our agenda today. It is robust, but we're going to start. We had one individual sign up for initial audience participation, and that's Sean Sullivan, and he'll have 3 minutes to speak with us. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go ahead and turn the floor over to him. Mr. Sullivan, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Sullivan. I am the outreach specialist with the WillCap Supportive Housing Division. I just wanted to give a testimony today about the success of outreach and what we've been doing in the past 6 months. I don't want to take too much away from the coalition and the information that they're going to share, but we have, excellent numbers. We've tested close to, as far as COVID testing, we've tested over close to 500 people. We've been able to secure close to 100 IDs. We've been able to culminate a relationship with the Social Security office and being able to try to help expedite getting people Social Security cards to get into housing. I'm just really happy with everything that's transpired with Choices, Josh Peppers, the aviator. The only thing I would like to say is I would like to add, as far as outreach workers, we would just probably like to have a little bit more access to being able to house people, because at the bottom where we are, we do a lot of the legwork. We get out there and get all of the information, but sometimes we don't really have the access to be able to house people as adequately and efficiently as we would like as some of our counterparts. But in lieu of all that, everything is great. We're moving in a great direction. I just want to commend the Assembly, the coalition, and all of our partners that have been working hard on this outreach. And I look forward to developing new programs and ideas and initiatives in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I appreciate that update and that testimony very much. I am going to share my screen one more time just to run through the agenda quickly, and then we'll just get right into it. So for today's agenda, we have quite a few updates, an update on the Sullivan Arena and non-congregate shelter, an update from the coalition, the current dashboard overview and Parks and Rec update. I want to talk about a change to the committee name, this particular committee, and then I want to kick off the conversation around Anchored Home 2021. And I don't expect that particular conversation to end today, but be a starting point. In addition, I would like to take a moment. Today is Miss Burke's last meeting with us, and I just want to take a minute to recognize her for all of the great work she has given the municipality and really put us on a path to problem solving in a constructive way. She's been a valuable resource to me, both to learn and to brainstorm with. And I know I will miss her when she is gone, but have lots of work to do with her in the intervening weeks that we have left. I also need to note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Dunbar and Mr. Rivera. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Ms. Burke for the non-congregate shelter update, and Ms. Kathleen Mclaughlin as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member Zalatel, and thank you for the kind words. It's been an honor to serve in this role and for this city. I'd like to just start today with an overview of the current state of our system. And this is an update on the slides that we reviewed in the last meeting, and the chart that we have that's tracking the number of people that are coming in for shelter this winter continues to increase, as you see. We look at, a full 200 people more than we saw last year in our emergency sheltering system. And so that's caused us, I'm sorry.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. We've been joined by Mr. Constant and Ms. LaFrance, and I just want to note that, Travis, can you make sure these were just emailed over to you, that these get posted up on the website for the folks on the phone? Thank you. Please continue.
So for those on the phone, we show a high mark of January 2020 last year of around 550 people. And the high mark for the end of December of 2020 at the end of last month was 736. This data is coming from our shelter call-in app. It's the app that makes a call to each of our shelter locations each night and asks for their census number. And as we develop the HMIS system, the Homeless Management Information System, and are more able to use that system for daily reports on who is coming in for shelter and additional data about the people in our shelter system, this dashboard has served as a placeholder to help us with planning for the needs of the system. And as you can see for this year, we have been continuing to add locations so that we can both protect people from the COVID virus, those that we know who are at higher risk of negative health outcomes from the virus, and also just keep people safe during what's been a very cold and snowy winter. So over the course of the last several months, there have been new additions to the mass shelter site, which was set up at the Sullivan Arena. Our top number for census at the Sullivan Arena is 376, but we also reserve some emergency spaces. So it runs closer to 400. Last night we were at 399. In addition to that, we've added since October 225 spaces at hotels across the community for people who are higher risk for not only catching COVID, but for having negative health outcomes from having it. And then we've added an additional congregate space at the Fairview Recreation Center, as well as warming tents. There are 2 tents outside the Sullivan Arena because, as you can see, our system is running quite close to capacity all the time. And 777 spaces are what we have available for people. And when we run 736, 740 people, there is a challenge of making sure that you have enough generally open spaces and not as many spaces that have particular selection criteria. So we run very tight to our capacity each night this winter. In order to address the needs and to work with the different parts of the municipality, the mayor's office and the administration are working closely with the health department, the emergency operations center, and other areas of the municipality to ensure that we can step down from the pandemic in a way that helps us move into the next phase of what our community plan to address homelessness will include. We know that it will include more people, at least for the time being. One of the things we are very quickly working on is a coordinated system to determine how many of those people are temporarily homeless and will be moving back into the community, into jobs, and into back onto their their path, and how many of those are people who need assistance to get out of our homeless services system. So we have 3 phases identified. The first one is to stabilize the emergency operations and to stabilize our response to that growing homelessness number. If we continue to see that number rise, this area will continue to take effort and emphasis from all of those municipal organizations. We do hope and we plan for that stabilization work to be completed by the end of January so that we can move into our post mass shelter planning work. The second phase of work is that will be a partnership between the health department and the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness in both updating the community assessment of where resources are or where we have gaps, as well as addressing the physical facilities we need to return the Sullivan Arena to its public use and to step down from the other locations where we've helped people gain safety this winter. We expect that phase of planning will be complete by the end of March. And then that will lead into the coalition's next phase of work, which will be about addressing how do we go forward from here. And so these 3 phases have some deeper work that is outlined here. You can see for yourself in the diagram, and for those on the phone. In phase 1, we're looking at the activities that need to happen to keep people safe from COVID as the vaccines roll out. How we can address the increased numbers of people, looking at our data systems to ensure that we're able to analyze the needs of people and help funnel them towards housing systems. And then vaccination planning for the shelters and other locations. The second phase includes activities such as looking at our permanent housing stock, looking at the resources we need to help people get out to those units, working with landlords, recruiting and helping retain landlords that will assist in housing people, and then the continued improvement in our homeless management information system. And then the last phase is, of course, updating the Anchored Home Community Plan. We're due for the next update for 2022 to 2025. With that general overview and setting the stage for an introduction from our partner on the ground, Beans Cafe has been operating our mass shelter system and has been the backbone of support for referrals out to the hotel locations, and has been generally managing so many things this winter around the safety of the Sullivan Arena and attempting to coordinate with our social service providers of the needs of people in that system. With that, I'll turn it over to Kathleen Mclaughlin.
Thank you, Nancy. Keep that slide handy as we get further in the agenda. I think we're going to want to return to phase 2 and 3. Ms. McLaughlin, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's really a privilege to be able to share some of the information with respect to what's happening at the Sullivan Arena and in the decompression beds. For many of you, I think you already know who I am. I'm Kathleen Mclaughlin. I am under contract with Beans Cafe to be the Shelter Operations Director for the Sullivan Arena at this time. And it's been a real honor to be able to work in this on this project. It is live, real time, boots on the ground work that really I think has helped inform me on how to work with our vulnerable population. The Sullivan Arena, as Nancy was mentioning last night, we were at a high water mark of 399, and that was people with heads in cots and heads on mats, permanent mats. We are mandated to not go over 400, so our goal is to use the Sullivan Arena as a magnet to get people in, and then to use our navigation team to help connect people with our community partners who have really stepped up. And I can go through a couple of those programs, and I think some of the subject matter experts on the outflow are also attending this meeting, so I'll also encourage them to also speak about this. But to then use our navigation team to try to get people out of the shelter and either into decompression beds in the hotels or over to Fairview. So last night, our mark of people that were under either the shelter, Fairview Rec, or the decompression hotel rooms was 661. The process for us inside the Sullivan is we do have a hard curfew at 9 o'clock. What we're trying to do is be good neighbors. So we are trying to encourage people to stay within the walls of the Sullivan unless they are shopping or doing other things that are healthy in our community. We are a low barrier shelter, so we do have some use of substances that we are trying to stay on top of. The real beauty of the decompression beds, the way that we have been able to set this up, is we have what I would call an accountability program, so that when people come into shelter, we start working with them as quickly as we can through our navigation team to determine who is ready for and capable of being in the hotel rooms. And with a accountability measure. And the beauty of that project has been that when people are motivated to get the opportunity to be in a hotel room, and also in mind that we do try to follow the CDC requirements, that we take the most at-risk individuals to COVID to also put them into the hotel rooms. But what it has done is it's been able to settle down kind of the culture inside the walls of the Sullivan. And what I mean by that is if you see your neighbor on the cot next to you being able to get a hotel room, it encourages you to also try to hook up into programs and services, and also to be able to self-advocate about how you can also be able to move forward. So I think that there has been a stabilization as a result of having these decompression rooms throughout Anchorage. Within the walls, we do COVID testing once a week. We try to do at least a minimum of 220 to 250, up to 400 every Tuesday, so that we have a good sense of the COVID spread inside the walls. Last week we had 230 tests, I believe, and we had one positive from that test. This week we did 236 yesterday, and we'll be getting those results. We have been working really well with EOC to be able to get people out as quick as possible to get them to the guest house in order to isolate or to quarantine. And so we have seen, pretty low numbers of COVID within that testing process. We are really looking forward to the vaccinations that are coming, and I look forward to hearing more about how that's going to be rolled out. With respect to trespass, we work with APD and the hospitals in order to take people straight away that are here that are needing to either release from the hospitals, or they're brought here by APD for a variety of reasons. Many of those individuals have challenging histories in shelters, and some have been or are currently trespassed from being inside. So we have been able to still serve these individuals by having them go to the warming tents. We have 2 warming tents, and just to jump into that, the maximum capacity is 25 clients per tent. We have one open 24/7, and we intermittently open the other one when our census is over 25 clients. Last night we had to open the second tent because we did exceed 25. Our biggest challenge with the warming tents is we will let people that have been trespassed from the Sullivan, inside the Sullivan, we've allowed them to go to the warming tents, except for 3 exceptions. If people have a history of extreme violence, if they are predators, or if they're actively selling drugs or alcohol, we will not let them use the warming tents because they become a danger to themselves and others. We do have security in the tents 24/7. We have 1 monitor and 1 safety monitor that are there at all times. And I think that it has really blended in to the other services that we've been able to provide at the Sullivan. As far as the inflow, we have not turned anybody away yet because but we are at 399. So we're always right on the cusp of trying to figure out how many people we need to put in kind of a holding situation in a warming tent, and how we can make sure that we do not send people out into the cold. With respect to outflow, I think the exciting pieces of that are coming together is HUD and the Anchorage Department of Health and the coalition created the Housing Problem Solving project so that we can try to capture new clients to homelessness and see if we can get them from not having to stay in the shelter. There's been some really nice wins with respect to that, and I can go into more detail if you guys would wish. But we also have Choices on site, and Choices has the Pay for Success and is doing real-time applications for many of the shelter guests. We also have people coming from the hotels back into the shelter to meet with Choices as well. What I am enjoying about this is that I like the fact that we have a community resource hub now that we can host nonprofits and our community partners so that they can come in and find the individuals that they need to partner with. With respect to what's going on in the next 3 months, I'm hoping that we're at our high water mark. We'll also be as far as the numbers. We had stuck around 625 for a while, and then we had this big uptick to about 650 to 661, and I'm still trying to figure out why that happened. But generally speaking, I think we are stable and we're moving forward as best as we can. And with that, I'll be open for questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. I appreciate the full update and the great work that you guys are doing and the coordinated efforts. If there are any questions, you can put yourself in the queue through the chat. I'm not seeing any yet, but will you be able to stay on the line with us as we move through our agenda in case any questions come up about the mass shelter and what you spoke about?
You bet.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, with that, we're going to just keep moving because we do have quite a few additional items. I'm going to turn it over now to the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness for an update. I think the updates provided by Ms. Burke and Ms. McLaughlin will be a great way to put some framing around these next ones. Please go ahead, Ms. Boyle.
Thank you, Assembly Member Zalatel, and to everyone else for having us today. I'm going to skip through my portion of this pretty quickly because I think the real magic here is the work that our providers came together to do. You know, in reflecting at the end of 2021, it became very apparent that we as a community continue to focus on the challenges in front of us, as is right and proper, but that we have not done a great job of talking about the incredible successes that occurred in 2020 as we were responding to homelessness and COVID. It's wonderful to hear Kathleen talk about some of the problem solving at Beans and the tremendous partnership that has enabled us to run one of the largest congregate care shelters in the country out of the work of Beans Cafe and Sullivan. A real testament to the fact that we haven't had an outbreak. And I love to point out that, as Nancy mentioned, we have over 200 very, very medically fragile individuals who are at risk of COVID because of age or because of underlying health conditions, who have been put into non-congregate shelters in hotels around the community. And to date, I have not received a single phone call of concern about those things. Traditionally, the coalition gets many phone calls from frustrated members of the community who are concerned about people experiencing homelessness. And I think it's a real, again, testament to the Emergency Operations Center and the partners that are operating these locations. I want to talk a little bit about a pilot project that we did last year, November and December of 2020. So when I say last year, it was pretty recent. I'm going to pull up some slides, and then as I mentioned, I'll go through my section pretty darn quickly because I suspect that you all want to hear from the folks that did the work. These are all available to you, and these are on the website, of course, for the meeting. But I did want to remind you all that last year in our 2021 priorities, the coalition, through its membership and the providers on the front line, recognized that while Anchorage has had a grassroots prevention system running for many years, the very organizations that run that grassroots prevention system have said for many years that we need to systematize that. It is uncoordinated in a formal way, and that means that the system is not as efficient in guiding people to mainstream and community resources as it could be, and that is particularly concerning as we deal with new homelessness as a result of COVID. So what we are going to talk about this afternoon is new homelessness. I always share this because I like to remind folks that we can make the conversation about high acuity homelessness pretty complicated, but it begins and ends with access to affordable housing. And in Anchorage, a huge piece of that is access to a rental unit that is affordable to the person who needs that rental unit. We do not have enough rental units in Anchorage for families that are low or moderate income prior to COVID. And what we are hearing from landlords in real time now is that our middle income folks are unfortunately out competing low income individuals for the available affordable rental units. So to be very specific about this, if I was a family that had lost some employment or some of my business due to COVID, I may make the smart choice to trade up my apartment when my lease is up to a less expensive apartment so that my family can save money and remain financially stable. I would argue that that is a wise decision, perhaps for my household, but that does unfortunately absorb the affordable housing stock that we have available for people to rent. I suspect we will be talking a lot more about affordable housing as we continue to unravel the long-term impacts of COVID on homelessness. But today I want to talk about great news. So when I talk about who's at risk of homelessness, even prior to COVID, this is old data, so again, I won't spend too much time on it, but about 20% of the renter households in our community are what we consider extremely low income. So these are people that are spending up to 50% of their monthly income on their rent. These are the individuals that we believe are most hard hit by the employment and business changes occurring as the economic impacts of COVID unfold. Just a quick reminder that these are individuals who are formally disabled. These are individuals who are elders and seniors who are retired. And these are individuals who are working people. About close to half of our extremely low income individuals are working folk, many of whom have lost their jobs because of COVID. The coalition recognized this last year when we did our gap analysis. And so we did prioritize the work of prevention. And of course, we have certainly shared data with you all about the historic impacts of economic changes on homelessness and what national experts were projecting would be the results of the economic hit we were all facing and continue to face because of COVID. So the good news, the Alaska Community Foundation released some grants last year focused on COVID relief. In late October, The coalition, in partnership with United Way, applied for a very last minute grant because United Way, as leads on the rent assistance distribution and the mortgage assistance distribution, was noticing that some of the families that were calling them for rent or mortgage assistance needed a little bit more help than just a payment to their landlord. So we dreamed a little dream of doing a very quick pilot. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Brown to talk about that pilot, and then you'll hear from 9-Star and Catholic Social Services who worked with the families. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So as Jasmine and Nancy mentioned, the prevention pillar work of Anchored Home includes a number of items around, broad items around housing affordability and availability, landlord coordination, and eviction avoidance. But it also includes work to find a more effective and efficient community-wide system to provide a little more boost to the more fragile households, to maintain their housing, and to improve their financial stability. So this project, as Jasmine mentioned, was to do work on the latter, to try to test a system where we did a little more comprehensive navigation support for the most economically fragile households. And the main goal was that they stay housed. The secondary goal was that they maintain financial stability and hopefully improve it. Right now, households can get direct assistance, whether that's rent or food, but navigating to those supports is hard in good times, and it's extremely hard during the pandemic. So the most fragile families, we wanted to see if a system where they got more consistent and personalized navigation support that included getting them connected to services throughout the community, not just with the agency that they happen to be engaged with, and also to include some financial supports to keep them stable, as well as connection to public benefits and other supports that are did not require additional financial assistance. And 2 organizations stepped up readily to help us pilot this. That's 9-Star and Catholic Social Services, and you'll hear from them in a minute. The goal for them was to maintain in these 2 months a high level of engagement with these households, to work with them to identify the key barriers that they were having that were making them housing insecure and financially insecure, gain access to a broad array of services, whether that's childcare, transportation, debt management, employment skills, any array of services, either paid or non-paid, and help them with staying housed and improving their financial stability throughout these 2 months. Jasmine, next slide, please. And we targeted 60 families. We didn't know how hard it would be to find families who were willing to do this, who were either extremely low income or low income. We ended up through the partners serving 115 households, and happy to say that 100% of those remained in their houses. This is not, because we had to do this very quickly, this is not, we don't have a control group and a lot of the other things you might do in a more comprehensive pilot. But at least these households were able to stay housed. Again, they got a wide array of community supports, as well as navigation assistance. And while a good number of them were employed at the beginning of this, not all were, but of the ones who had income, they were able to maintain that level of income, and 32 households actually got new or improved employment. So this pilot is really useful to the partners working together, figuring out how to develop a more comprehensive community system that will be much easier on people who need help. so they don't have to go to 20 different places to get the help they need. And we hope that it will help inform the next phase of federal dollars that come in to help people with rent and other assets, so that we can combine those resources with this kind of enhanced navigation system to better serve our economically fragile households in both housing stability and financial stability. So with that, I will turn it over to first 9-Star and then to Catholic Social Services to talk about what the work was like in the field. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ruth Shane Laban, 9-Star Education Employment Services President. I have been with 9-Star for almost 29 years and been doing a lot of different kinds of services that we've been bringing to people. I am very excited to say that this project gave us a lot of hope as providers, because we have tried to get the dollars to make this kind of partnership available, and that has not been the case for so many years. We've served people who, in our case, our focus is people who are on the brink of homelessness, not people who are homeless, and trying to prevent them from becoming homeless through economic development of one kind or another, and especially through employment. So we have been very excited about the resources that were available these last couple months, and we had so much of a great response from our people who needed services and wanted services, that we kind of dipped into another pot of funds as well to help make some of these resources available to people. Our partnerships have always been great with people in the coalition and with other agencies that provide other services to us, but and to our clients. But our job seekers are usually a unique bunch, because they are not usually on public assistance or have those kinds of things at their disposal. So the thing that you see in front of you, the slide you see in front of you, is that we served 93 families out of that group this last bunch, and 97 job seekers. So there were 4 families where there were husbands and wives or partners that were served. And almost every one of them was in contact several times a week, if not every day, to try to get the system in place for them, so that they could not only get a job, but keep that job. And then we want to help them move forward. And they have all agreed to stay on with 9-Star. Even the 32 that got new jobs have agreed to stay on, because we want to help them build a career plan. And their career plan includes all those menus of services. A lot of behavioral health things need to come into play. I truly have believed for many, many years that the majority of people who are unemployed are discouraged and depressed and need some behavioral health support so that they can get started again, so they can go to the next step. And I just find it really exciting. So 9-Star has created an integrated service system within our own walls. And it starts with our adult education, with our career development center, our career education center, and our youth services. And we try to blend the families, get them to the right services, use all the things at our disposal. And then we have hundreds of partners throughout the community that will provide the food and the housing and the other supports that are needed for the legal supports and all those different things, because there is a menagerie of things that people need, and we are not all things to all people. That's why this partnership has worked so well. We've been partners with Catholic Social Services and United Way and the Coalition and tons of other agencies for many, many years. And so you can see just this menu of services that we provide. We try to get family members together and integrated into this service. And we're very, very excited to keep on working with this population of people for the next year. So if you have any questions or if you want to take it, I think Catholic Social Services can just take over from here, if I'm not mistaken.
Hi, thanks, Ruth. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse Taliva. I am program manager here at Catholic Social Services, and I oversee the Path to Independence Rapid Rehousing Program, the Cook Inlet Housing Authority Housing Prevention Program, and then I was also tasked to help out with this COVID relief housing prevention through the United Way grant. So when I received this was back in early December of last month. So it was very quick. This is the first time I had to deal with a grant that was very short term. So it was myself and another caseworker that worked diligently to help serve the community. So in less than a month, we provided assistance to 23 household members, which included 2 American veteran household members, and 126 individuals were served under this pilot project. And like I was saying, we worked up until the last day. I remember we were at Costco shopping with the last 3 of our families on New Year's Eve. So it was really nice to really get in there and just help a lot of the folks that were in need. I wanted to share a story of a family that we helped. And then this is a family of 9. It's a wife and her husband and 7 children. So in March of last year, she was laid off from her job with Nana Native Corporation due to COVID. And then after that, she started job searching. And so in June of last year, she obtained full-time employment. She got full-time benefits, which was really good. And so, after not being employed for 2 months, she was just really struggling to make ends meet. And then in August, after completing a COVID test with her employer, she was notified by the management team that she tested positive for COVID-19. Shortly after, her husband, her son, and some of her other children also tested positive. So quarantining took a little bit longer for her and her family due to all who tested positive. Her husband was hospitalized, and it was a struggle trying to care for her children, especially when they were all sick and weak. But she did her best to keep pushing through. And what hurt the most was just being away from her husband that was hospitalized. So she felt lost and just trying to deal with everything, especially struggling financially. And then she finally made it back to work in August, not August, but October. Her children are doing well, and her husband made it out of the hospital safely. But she was still struggling with rent. She was behind on a car note and struggling to provide food for her family. But she went to work every day. But she's very thankful that through this grant, we were able to help put food on her table and to help with the car note that she was behind on. And then we also had some leftover funds through this grant. And so we were able to help with $1,000. It was a past due rent that she had. So she is forever grateful for the help that she received. And it's truly been a blessing for her and her family, and just a motivation for her to continue to helping others. So thank you.
Thank you so much to all the partners and for the update. Ms. Boyle, is there anything more?
Just thank you for the opportunity to hear about this success. When this came to my attention last week in our grant report, I just sat back with the realization that 115 families were able to safely stay in their homes with their family members during the holidays. And I think about those childhood adverse effects. I think about the trauma our kids are living with these days. And 115 families were helped by the folks at 9 Star and Catholic Social Services, and certainly the leadership of United Way. And I just wanted to share that. If anyone has questions, you're welcome to contact me, and I can put you in touch with Ruth and the folks over at CSS. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the agenda.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all the partners for being here. I really appreciate, and I hope this helps demonstrate the kinds of partnerships we talk about when we talk about Anchored Home and the plans to address homelessness. Let's see, we are now on number 3 on the agenda, current dashboard overview / Parks and Rec update. Nancy, are you going to kick us off?
Yes, and then I'll turn it over to Director Durand. You're welcome. I wanted to share my screen one more time and direct everyone to the dashboard we have for the camp abatement process. Lives on the Muni's homelessness information page, and that's available through the municipality's main page. There's information, some additional deeper work about our strategies and progress, and then some information about housing programs on this page as well. But in the middle of it is the camp abatement process. And as I look to exit the municipality, I still contend this process is certainly not perfect by any means, but I haven't seen a community tie camp abatement work to opportunities for outreach. We heard from Mr. Sullivan at the beginning. He's with Rural Cap, one of the organizations that does outreach regularly in the community and has for many years. And the connections of helping people get to the resources needed to exit homelessness are right in the middle, embedded in this camp abatement process. So as we move people out of parks and out of off our trails, we're moving them to opportunities to get to housing. So once again, for this year, we will begin our process with the crowdsourcing the information about where camps are across the community. This is the public's opportunity to report where the camps are coming in. On the website, we've tried to create a diagram that shows the process that the municipality goes through to both verify the camp reports that come in, and then to prioritize them in terms of where abatement will happen and where public safety concerns are located. And then lastly, to prioritize the cleanup activities. It's of note that last year we used a couple of new tools. There are several kinds of abatements that happen and tools available to this administration this summer and future administrations in terms of lining out zones that could be abated. So large areas of trail sections or park areas that have been more heavily impacted. We can do faster turnaround as the availability of storage for belongings is solidified, and Josh will have an update about that. And we can also, as we tested last summer, close sections to any kind of activity, as we did around the Sullivan Arena through the end part of the summer and the fall, to ensure that we were not having additional activity in an area close to the mass shelter site. And so as we look to move forward with this, I do want to say that, to sort of loop back around to the first topic that we touched on, the activities of the camp abatement process have been tied through policy availability of shelter, with the idea that we are helping people do the right thing, move from parks and trailways to shelter, to housing, and back into community life. And the pairing of this is important, and I know that the conversation will continue about adequate shelter and housing opportunities, so that this work is really about returning public spaces to everyone in the community to use. Unless there are questions about this dashboard, I encourage everyone to explore the tabs and the information available there. And if there are no questions, I'll turn it over to Josh.
No questions. Mr. Durand, are you on for Parks and Rec? Can we?
I can give a quick update, or I see that Chris Schutte is on. I'm comfortable either way.
Yeah, whichever you two would prefer.
Why don't I jump in, and if there are corrections, Chris oversees Parks and Rec, and he can jump in. So there was additional funding that was provided to Parks and Recreation for year-round abatement. And this will be a first for our community to have the ability to respond to camps throughout all seasons. The winter season is challenging for camp work because of the snow and the ice, but also the very real importance of dislodging someone from a place in the community to shelter. And so the additional resources available for Parks and Rec, it's my understanding from Josh that they will be ramping up to bring on staff as early as end of February to begin to kick off this year's season. And those will be employees that will be, they will not be seasonal, so they will go throughout the entire year. Additionally, there will be a person who can be more centrally located in an office who will be experienced with the GIS, the mapping that happens around the camps. And it's the goal to improve the public's experience of knowing where we are in that chart that I showed you. So frequently people will say, I reported a camp, but I don't know what's happening with it. And that's been a capacity problem. We just have not had the ability to respond to all the reports that come in. Many are related to garbage around the community, and then some are related to old camps, and some are active camps. So it takes a tremendous amount of coordination between the boots on the ground, Parks and Recreation employees and the police department to provide that information back. And that's just simply a loophole we haven't been able to connect in prior years. And I'm very excited that Parks and Recreation is taking this on and will be able to take the next steps to close that communication loop with our community partners. I think we can expect to see a similar lineup this spring because the funding has just become available, and the hiring process will now begin. So I know the camp abatement process will be coming online as quickly as we can this spring to try to prevent people from going out early in the season and setting up camps that then make it harder to go back through and abate. So we find that being quick in the spring season helps us to really roll into the summer and keep our parkways and trails clean.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Burke. I just will note that it's my intention to have Parks and Rec dashboard update kind of as a standing item moving forward with the committee so that we can all stay completely up to date with how this new or this expanded service rolls out. With that, unless there are any questions about the dashboard or the plan for Parks and Rec, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, and it is one that I put on the agenda, and it's to change the committee name. I'd like to discuss with members if they have anything they would like to discuss about changing the name to the Assembly's Committee on Housing and Homelessness. the proposal really stems out of what we've heard from the coalition, the gap analysis, that to get to the root of issues around homelessness, we need to tackle issues around affordable housing and availability of housing stock. We do not currently have an assembly committee that addresses policy related issues or issues related to housing policy head on beyond the developer or the kind of mechanics of building homes or where homes may be located, which is the Community and Economic Development Committee. So I'd like to open that up for a short period of time here for conversation. If any members have any concerns about adding that layer to this committee or any additional comments. And it looks like first we have Mr. Rivera, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had 3 points / questions. First is I wanted to get a sense of the HAND Commission, and I know some time ago they also made it a part of their mission to try to diversify their conversations, so it wasn't just homelessness or it wasn't just housing, but it was an amalgamation of both. So I just wanted to get a sense if someone's on the line and they could speak to the success or not of that conversion in the HAND Commission. Wanted to get a sense, and you mentioned this already, about CEDC and sort of how you imagine this working in tandem with CEDC. And then last, I wanted to get a sense of the staffing needs to add this additional component for the committee and what that looks like. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take those in reverse order here really quick. I don't anticipate any additional staffing needs. Of course, if any of the other members believe that it would be required, it would be very much the collaborative process that we've always used in this committee. I believe Mr. Constant and Mr. Weddleton are both on, so as Mr. Dunbar, who are members of CEDC. I think we can continue to be collaborative and not overlap. As I stated, I think they deal more with the mechanics of how housing is built or Title 21 concerns around land use. And we've had some overlap between this committee and that, particularly as to right now, Title 21 changes for shelter in B3 zones. And I think we've done well navigating that. And then I will ask, is there anyone from the HAND Commission on the line with us today? I'm not seeing anyone. I've been in touch with that commission. It's my hope that they would bring any of their recommendations around affordable housing and availability of affordable housing through the committee, and that we could be a bit more collaborative. We do have a collaboration with the Houseless Resource Advisory Committee, HRAC, and others, but I was hoping that that would be an additional layer we could add on to the committee. Is there anything else, Mr. Rivera?
Great, that covers everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, please.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to speak to the HAND Commission question. And interestingly, that's the HAND Commission, which is a citizen commission, and this is the Assembly Commission. And so in some ways, there's an argument that paralleling that change we made there matches our policy better than our practice right now does, because what we want to see there is a clear focus on the broad issues of homelessness in the community, and housing policy is a critical element of that. And so I would suggest that the change that we made on the HAND Commission, while it may or may not have had a significant impact on their operation, it certainly established the policy of the body that focuses both housing and homelessness. And so it only argues that we do the same for our own committee that focuses on similar issues.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Constant. Is there anyone else who'd like to weigh in on proposed committee name change? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. So the next item is Anchored Home 2021. Oh,
Before
please
you
go
move
ahead.
on, do you need a recommendation?
I honestly don't know, Mr. Constant.
So-
I was going to bring it up for discussion and then circle back with the chair of the assembly to see what the final process would be.
Question, do we have a quorum of this committee present, or is this committee the whole?
It's a committee present. Mr. Turner, could you see if we have a quorum? And then Miss Kennedy is in the queue. So let's let her speak while we see if we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I'm a little hesitant just because I know what happens when you start to spread yourself too thin and, just add more things onto your agenda, so to speak. And so, there's always been a focus on homelessness, which I think has been a huge challenge and has been somewhat a little more laser focused, which I've kind of appreciated. So I do kind of hesitate this idea of spreading out into something that's a little more broad. And I do think there is an impact on staffing. If we do start going into building policies, housing policies, things like that, it is going to be something that involves permitting and all the things in that whole building world, which we have staff members who do attend the Community and Economic Development Committee regularly on those kinds of topics. So I think you're going to need to pull their expertise from those groups as well. So that does add another, it's not really a cost in staffing, but it is the staff's time where they would have to basically attend both meetings if we're going to actually find a foot in both of those communities for those particular kinds of topics. So I guess I don't think it's a problem for the homelessness committee to look at some of those things, but if you really are trying to broaden the area of expertise for this particular committee, I think you might want to be a little more cautious on that idea. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. To Mr. Constant's question about a quorum, the members of this committee are myself, Zalatel, Member Allard, Member Kennedy, Member Constant, Member Perez Verdia, and Member Rivera, which I believe are all present.
So, Madam Chair, I would actually move that we change the name of the committee, and I would ask for a second so we can at least discuss it.
Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Mr. Rivera.
And the reason why I would argue that we do it is we have all of the resources in place. We have the chief housing officer still part of the municipality, at least until she is no longer with us because she retires. We do have a clear track record of working closely together with the Community and Economic Development Committee where the items fall more closely into their purview of questions of permitting and Title 21. But the fear that by taking on the issue of housing under the umbrella of our focus of this committee, I think it's important because anywhere you go, even the presentation we saw today by the coalition started with a presentation on the problem of affordable housing in the community and how it correlates to people falling into this homeless system that we've been developing, or mechanisms that we can establish that keep people from falling in who are on the edge. And so I think that while I appreciate the concern that it might be an over-broadening, even in our presentation today, we saw clear data presented to us that the issue of housing is right at the crux of the issue of homelessness.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. I put myself in the queue. Briefly, I just want to say that it's my vision as chair of the committee here to really look at that data and the issue presented by the Coalition to End Homelessness and the gap analysis around affordable housing and the availability of affordable housing, which is really driving the numbers around homelessness. So it feels like if we continue just to address issues of homelessness, we don't dig in under as to the cause or maybe the ultimate solution. We just keep treating the symptoms. And I don't think that that in and of itself will overlap a lot with what Community and Economic Development Committee does. There may from time to time be collaboration. And as Mr. Constant said, I think we've shown a good track record with collaborating with that committee on other issues where there has been overlap. Ms. Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have to go back to the idea of if we're really broadening, then there are a lot of things that I think this committee could broaden itself on in terms of a committee name, because there are a lot of aspects to homelessness that I don't think we're necessarily addressing. Affordable housing could be one of them, but I'm actually more concerned about what we're doing for mental health issues and for drug and alcohol addiction issues. And, we know that those are the kinds of resources that are lacking in this community that really we're just not seeing any real progress on. I mean, we're trying to hack away at it little by little. But I do think that is an important part of the homelessness issue. And I don't know, I mean, if we're going to broaden the full scope to cover all the things that need to be covered in terms of what homelessness is all about, then maybe we should add that to the title as well, that we're also the Housing and Homelessness and Addressing Mental Health and Addiction Committee. So anyway, like I said, I think if we get too broad, then we do lose our focus. If the title isn't actually talking about or doesn't help us reflect accurately on what we should be doing, then we absolutely should be adding the mental health and addiction component. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Constant.
Thanks, and I 100% agree that we have really a duty to focus on the behavioral health care components, the mental health, the addiction issues. And I do believe that issue, that is solidly within the purview of the Health Policy Committee, and that it has tackled that to a bit. And I am hopeful that the municipality going forward at some point will continue and will pick up the charge that I have levied on the table, that we need a behavioral health director, a leader in the field that we hire in the health department, that's their number one focus. Because while we can continue to focus on housing and homelessness, and we can continue to focus on health policy until we have somebody whose job it is to ensure that every part of this municipality that intersects at all with that healthcare system, the mental health, the addiction system, is fully staffed and alive, we're going to always be a bit behind the eight ball. So I completely agree.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. With that, we have Mr. Constant's motion with recommendation and a second. Mr. Turner, could you call a vote of the committee members, please?
Yes.
Chair, this is Assemblywoman Allard. Can Mr. Constant please just reiterate exactly, just a little bit shorter context?
Yeah, the motion is to add the term housing to the title of the committee, just to bring it in parallel with the Housing and Homelessness Neighborhood Development Committee and the practical reality that we have before us, which is housing and homelessness are inextricably linked.
Okay. So, Assemblymember Allard?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Felix?
Yes.
Mr. Weddleton?
Yes.
And Ms. Zaltel?
Yes, and I'm not sure if we've updated the committee members. Actually, we should have Mr. Perez Verdia and not Mr. Weddleton. But if Mr. Perez Verdia is on. And this is not a committee of the whole. This has specific committee members. But of the committee members, Zalatel, Allard, Kennedy, Constant, Perez Verdia, and Rivera, that looks like that recommendation carries. Thank you, Mr. Turner. So I'm going to turn to the last item on our agenda. And this one is really to, it was set up a bit by Ms. Burke as she talked about the phases moving forward, about what's next. Anchored Home 2021, what's next? It's really a conversation around making sure we're clear on what the municipality already, what does the municipality already do? What are the public health and safety considerations we want to talk about, particularly as we've previously been defined as working through Pillar 4 of Anchored Home, public health and safety, and what happens after COVID. So this is really meant to start to frame a conversation about the issues this committee wants to do a deeper dive into in the intervening months. I'm going to see if we can put Ms. Burke's slide back up as we have this conversation. But before we do that, we have one thing I did want to highlight as to something the municipality does do that members of this committee and the general public may not be as familiar with. And so what I'm sharing now, and it's on the website, is information about the CDBG Community Block Grant and the ESG, or Emergency Solution Grant funds, that move through the Anchorage Health Department out into the community with very specific targeted beneficiaries. It is something that will soon be open for public comment period as to how the municipality should use these funds. They're fairly substantial amounts of funding. The Community Development Block Grant is $3,061,741, and the Emergency Solutions Grants Funds is $4,295,217. These are funds that are regularly administered by the municipality. But really wanting to highlight that. And I've asked Nicole Lebo from the health department on a fairly regular basis as we work through these two funding sources to provide us updates and make sure that we're extremely familiar with the mechanics of how these work. Ms. Lebo, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Hi, thank you, Assemblymember Zalatel. I would suggest that we already have allotted some of these resources, and we are going through the process right now of contracting with certain agencies. We have about $400,000 that we put out to eligible shelter providers to cover the cost of increased operation during this time. We also have within the health department, we have a rental assistance program, and so some monies have been allocated in that direction. Lastly, we've allocated some dollars for a rapid rehousing program through Catholic Social Services. So, but then there are still monies that are left to be, that are unallocated, and that's why we're seeking input at this time. Whereas we have some that are dedicated in theory to shelter operations, and that's in effort to step down the Sullivan sometime in the near future. So that would be for overnight shelter operation dollars as well as day engagement shelter. I mean, that's something that we have, but we don't have those locations up and running at this moment in time. So those might get reallocated. We also want to make sure that we're aligning our allocations to the gap analysis put forward by the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness. And just as you guys were just discussing about affordable housing being a part of homelessness or inextricably linked, we want to focus on our outflow and we want to focus on community need. And that is why we are specifically looking to support some permanent supportive housing projects. So, as I say, and as Assemblymember Zalatel said, we're looking for input from providers right now. We're looking for them to bring forward eligible projects, and then we will take stock of all of those things, prioritize, and then eventually put forward a recommendation that would have to be approved first by the mayor and then secondly by the Assembly. So here, if you have any further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lebo. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you very much. So looking at the two pools, I think I have to go back to the email, the $4 million. Was this the additional, was this the additional funding that we received as appropriated under the CARES Act for emergency for HUD? Is this outside of our regular allocation? Because I know we're expecting about that much.
Yeah, yes. So these are all CV funds, which means that they're COVID related, and there's a deadline for expenditure of all of these funds. There's a few deadlines, actually. We have to spend 20% by this September. We must spend 80% by March of 2022, but that's only for the ESG part. And this is additional to any other HUD dollars that we receive through the municipality on an annual cycle.
Okay.
But this doesn't have anything to do with any of the monies that came in through the state. This is all money that came directly. Okay. Thank you.
There was a special appropriation through HUD to local governments, and we were supposed to receive about $4 million that I had seen. And I wanted to make sure that we're talking about the same. And so practically speaking, these dollars are outside of our annual appropriations for this program and that program. And so it's very helpful to think of it in the context of these dollars are broadly usable for realignments within our system, right? Whether temporary or permanent. And so an argument that providing additional funding for getting people housed outside of shelter is a good one in the context of the source of funds. We're not pulling from this year's grantees or that year's grantees.
That's exactly right. That's
new
exactly
and different
right.
dollars.
Absolutely. Yes. And we want to balance what are those immediate needs and then how could we be utilizing these dollars to improve our shelter system long term.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Lebo. So I'm going to reshare this diagram as we look at this. I want to spend, to the extent that there's conversation to be had about where we want to really dig in over the next couple of months. This is the driver diagram that Ms. Burke had previously shared, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I view this as these phases leading toward the anchored home plan that we are moving out of the, as we move out of a COVID-19 posture and look to dealing with the effects and then long term. I believe anchored home will be something that is very broadly revised or changed starting in 2022, but practically speaking, what are the policy implications into 2021? So with that, I open it up to any conversation, both from members of the committee as well as the administration about thoughts as to areas that we should take a deeper look into. Okay, well, if there's nothing, I guess I will just say that I think it's important that we have these conversations. So it'll be my intention, unless I hear otherwise or offline hear something, to really jump into some of these boxes under, particularly starting in phase 2, to make sure that this committee is fully up to date on HMIS and data collection. As you've learned through being educated about the gap analysis, data collection is really at the crux of a lot of what drives the homeless response system. Similarly, I want to have this committee dive into centralized coordinated management of the system, and then of course, housing issues, which I think start to get into phase 3 about reducing system inflow. Stabilized crisis response, Ms. Kennedy's comments around behavioral health and substance misuse definitely were well taken, to the extent that we should collaborate with health policy or even the public safety committee as we roll out the mobile crisis team and learn more there. I hope that we use all of that information and really get a good sense on what's happening that affects the homeless response system moving forward as we consider our policy recommendations and what role, how we want to refine the role of the municipality moving forward as we put together the next version of Anchored Home. With that, I'm going to actually ask if there are any additional comments on that particular agenda item before moving into committee legislative and budget priorities. Okay, then committee legislative and budget priorities. If there are any legislative priorities, we'll take these both together, or budget items for first quarter budget revisions 2021 and then the budget 2022. I know we just finished the budget, but it's never too late or too early to start thinking about the next year. Are there any items members would like to raise? Mr. Constant.
Thank you. And I think this might be a more generalized question to all of our committees, to the chair, Mr. Rivera, but it might be wise as the legislature convenes that sometime in the next 30 days, we convene with the chairs of the legislative committee and review our kind of program to the state and have a kind of open conversation about what the priorities are there and how we intend to see them advocated for.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. And then to the extent that we are working with our partners about legislation and budget, as we know, the state budget can have a great effect on the homeless response system in Anchorage. So if there are issues that need to be brought to our attention or as we track them, we can certainly bring them back through this committee as well. In February, and that will still be good timing to be responsive to the budget at the state level. Anything else? Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us along to audience participation. I did have one individual sign up for the end of the meeting, time permitting. Louis Imbriani, are you on the phone with us? If so, *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Zalatel, for allowing me to speak at the end of the meeting. There was a point that was brought up that I was going to touch on, but I'm really glad that I got to touch on it afterwards, about how there are like median income people that are now kind of downgrading or going into a lower cost of housing to help insulate themselves from the pandemic. And seeing this as a trickle-down effect happening at not just the median, but also slightly above. I know that there were some concerns, or some people had voiced their opinions about the green cards that came in the mail for the property taxes. So maybe it's my overthinking, or maybe I'm not fully understanding the circumstances around everything. And I know that I can't do that just because it's a lot of information and a lot of people put a lot of time into it. But I want the Assembly the people who are making the decisions to be very cognizant of when they raise the property taxes or raise the cost of a permit to do work on a house, landlords insulate themselves from that. And they do that by increasing rent. I'm sure that I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but I know that for some of the larger private landlords, they're raising their rates for their newer tenants or people who are re-upping their lease right now because of what went out. So that just caused the price of housing to go up. And for somebody who's already struggling, that's another factor. Just something to think about and something to look at. The last thing that I wanted to say was that I don't know if any of the coalitions are working with other villages or other towns in Alaska, but I know that when I did work for DOC, that we had people that would come to Anchorage and kind of be stuck here due to conditions of their court. And then just helping those people like try to get back or even learn about how Anchorage works, because that can be kind of a culture shock. I don't know if that's being taken in consideration. I'm sure it is, but I just wanted that to be heard as well. And that is all that I have. Thank you, Ms. Zolotel.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. The next person who's requested to participate is Mr. Branson. Are you able to hear me, Mr. Branson?
I am. And
okay.
I just wanted to make a quick
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to make the quick comment that I appreciate everybody's really good work today, everyone that participated, and the general direction you guys are taking, the cure on housing and homelessness. I think it's a really outstanding job today, and I just thank you. That's all.
Thank you for participating. Anyone else would like to participate?
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Haberman.
My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. First, I'd like to say I've said this before. I'd like to compliment the Assembly members and the particular committee as having a conversation dealing with homelessness. It's obvious that you are concerned about it, and you've been involved with it over the years. In comparison, out in the Valley, I'm trying to recall the last time the word homelessness ever occurred in the language at a public meeting at the Borough Assembly meeting. And as you know, I attend those meetings too. And there's over 100,000 people there. But obviously, it's not on their mind as much as it is in Anchorage. I wish it was more of on their mind, respectfully, with what you're doing and concerning with the Valley. Second is I agreed with Assemblymember Kennedy in the concern of changing the name, and I am concerned that you went ahead and changed the name without having any input from the public, and I'm thankful that Assemblymember Kennedy put in her concerns and how it was where there are other committees already existing that are involved with certain issues that have you take one issue over to another Assembly committee and address it there in a way that takes away from what other Assembly committees are doing. And then I'd like to also close with this. The members who are listening, that whenever you make decisions and administration, you've got to realize that be careful. Are your decisions creating more people that are going homeless? Are creating more economic hardship in the community? So whenever you do things, remind yourself too, are you really having a conversation with the public fairly before you make those decisions? And it's even more critical in the COVID time. And thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman.
I'm on Meg. Ron Oliva would like to participate.
Sure, please go ahead, and then we've got one member comment, and then we'll be done. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. I continue to hire homeless individuals. This particular individual is staying at the Fairview Rec Center, and he does bring me his test results, but as I understand it, it's not only an overflow shelter, but also a quarantine area for those that are infected. How long is it going to be a homeless shelter? And then what mandates or protocols should I follow when we hire from a quarantine location? Is that something that can be answered by anyone who's listening, or can you direct me to another location, and I'll go on with my other comments?
Please continue, Mr. Oliva.
Okay, well, the other thing, you know, having Fairview Rec Center used as a homeless shelter in a quarantine, you know, if Fairview doesn't claim it back, knowing that they're not NIMBYs, and a new location can be found for the rec center, because all the facilities at the rec center in Fairview are available. Kitchen, showers, place to stay, offices, counseling, and it's also close to the health clinic that's nearby. But recently, I believe a recommendation out of planning and zoning to rezone the old Heritage Hospital site, if that could be possible, a new location for a rec center and a recreational complex, including a ski hill, soccer field, little league field, basketball courts, hockey rink. Some of the land can handle that, whereas the other can handle a facility. And if anything's going to genderify the east end of downtown bordering on Fairview, which is a blend, I think having that anchor similar to the Park Strip would bring in a new wave of millennials who would utilize that facility and that complex, including a sledding hill. I think it would be a real anchor. And when you shuffle this CARES money, maybe you should look at the potential for new construction and give up the present location of the rec center, because, hey, it's working out. And I think Fairview, whether they had a lot of pressure, their attitude now is we're not NIMBYs, so they should welcome the facility. And I'd like to hear some evidence that they would reject it.
That's your time, Mr. Oliva. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
There are no questions. Thank you. Mr. Constant.
Yep, thank you. I'll be brief. First, that perspective is not a perspective shared by the Fairview Community Council. Second, Mr. Imbriani, I just wanted to say, if you're still listening, that I have long supported the concept of an Office of Rural Affairs, and it's certainly a priority on my list, an organization within the municipality that will work with rural Alaskan communities to ensure we are doing the best by those who come and visit our community, that we're good hosts, and that we're helpful in making sure that their visit is safe and good for them. And then finally, you know, I have long been told for the last several years that I drank the Kool-Aid. That's not the case. And this is in the context of Nancy Burke. Ms. Burke, if you're still on the line, I'm briefly going to speak to the history of a relationship. Some 12 years ago, we met at the Fairview Community Council on opposite sides of a table, going head to head on an issue that the neighborhood lost on. And that was the Carluck Manor project. And through the process of that kind of eye-opening moment, the Fairview Community Council did reckon with itself and come to realize that it has a duty to be a welcoming community, but that any investments in services in the neighborhood need to be balanced with investments across other parts of town. Now, that argument wasn't one that happened easily or quickly between us. There were many moments of heated exchanges, I would say shouting at each other. And through it, we continued listening to each other, and we both moved in our positions. And the movement that we made from polar opposites to people who have joint cause and are willing to fight through the struggles and stay in the tension to find the best answer for the municipality is proof that anyone can. If we could, anyone can. And so I would just leave my words of gratitude to Nancy Berg in the context of the fact that the job that she took on was impossible when she started, and it's still impossible, but the impossible is achieved when people of goodwill work hard together to sort out their differences, to find the facts and the truth, and to drive towards common cause. And so to that end, Nancy, I say good journey wherever you may land, and the Muni is better for having had your service, and we will proceed to continue to find enduring places for people to move out of homelessness and back into our community, much to the credit of your efforts. So thank you.
Here, here. All right. With that, we are 4 minutes over, ending on a high note. So we will be adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.